Today's walk is in Kirkby Lonsdale. It's going to take us to Devil's Bridge. We're going to walk along the River Lune and we're going to go check out Ruskins view, and then we're going to have a little look around in the village. So we're starting the walk today at Wood Close Park where we are staying.
How do I do it?
And it's literally on the doorstep of Kirkby Lonsdale. Kirkby Lonsdale is pretty much a stone's throw away from Wood Close Park, and it will bring you out at Devil's Bridge. Today's walk is circular, therefore stick around to the end of the video to learn more about why it is called Devil's Bridge. The original plan was to walk down the River Lune to the Radical Steps and then go see Ruskins view. However, our stomachs had other plans. Kirkby Lonsdale sits between the Lake District, Yorkshire Dales and the Forest of Bowland. This historic market town sits on the banks of the River Lune, with its cobbled streets, historic buildings and impressive views across the Lune Valley. The town has a fascinating history, from its medieval church and famous Devil's Bridge to Ruskins view, which was described by the Victorian artist John Ruskin as one of the most beautiful views in England. Kirkby Lonsdale is frequently named one of the Sunday Times best places to live in the UK. On our hunt for food, we walked around the Kirkby Lonsdale cricket ground, which is located in Lunefield Park, and there was a match in session. Within minutes, we reached the market square. Kirkby Lonsdale has been a market town since 1227, when it was granted a charter for a weekly market. The original market was held around the streets near the church, before this larger market square was created in the early 19th century. The ornate cross standing here today dates from 1905 and was gifted to the town by the local vicar, Reverend JMW Davies. In 2019, the market square was transformed into Victorian England for a chase scene in the film Doolittle, starring Robert Downey Jr. The Royal Hotel dates back to the 18th century, although part of the building behind it is even older. Originally known as the Rose and Crown Inn, it was renamed the Royal Hotel after Queen Adelaide, widow of William IV, stayed here in 1840. One of the things I loved about Kirkby Lonsdale was discovering its little ginnels and alleyways tucked away behind the main streets. And some of them have the most wonderful quirky histories. This is Salt Pie Lane, which was once known as Cattle Market Yard. By 1911 it had gained its name, thanks to the local woman who sold hot salted mutton pies to the market traders. And apparently those salty pies made the traders thirsty enough to visit Green Dragon Inn, whose landlord happened to be a relative of the pie maker. We then walked past Dale's Traditional Butchers, who won Britain's Best Sausage in 2023. Congratulations. Eventually we stumbled upon number 44 and decided to give it a try. And I'm so glad that we did. Mark had a freshly squeezed orange juice, which you don't see that often, while I went for a refreshing berry smoothie. We both chose the English breakfast and noticed a sign saying that Dale Butchers sources the meat here. Well, I can confirm, Dale's really does make an incredible sausage. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that that English breakfast was the best English breakfast I've ever had. In order to get to Ruskins view, it is a short walk to the church from the cafe. St Mary's Church is one of Kirkby Lonsdale's oldest landmarks, with a church believed to have stood on its site even before the Norman conquest. The present church began taking shape in the early 12th century, and you can see some wonderful Norman features today. And tucked amongst the graves is this rather unusual little stone gazebo. Dating from the late 18th or early 19th century, it was originally built as a summer house for the old vicarage garden. It is also here in the churchyard that you'll find the path leading to the famous Ruskins view. And now we've reached what is probably the most famous view in Kirkby Lonsdale. Standing here, Looking out across the River Lune and the valley beyond, it's not difficult to understand why this particular spot has attracted artists, writers and visitors for centuries. And it wasn't just the artists Turner and Ruskin who were captivated by this landscape. William Wordsworth also mentioned the view in his 1810 Guide to the Lakes, encouraging visitors to by no means admit looking at the Valley of Lune from the churchyard. So by the time Ruskin arrived here in 1875, this was already a celebrated viewpoint. Turner had painted it, Wordsworth had recommended it, and Ruskin would go on to give it the name we know it today. Looking out across the valley, it's easy to see why. The River Lune winds its way through the landscape below, with the hills stretching out beyond it. Ruskin was clearly rather taken with what he saw. He described it as one of the loveliest scenes in England, and went even further, saying, "I do not know in all my country, still less in France or Italy, a place more naturally divine." Turner saw it, Wordsworth wrote about it, Ruskin praised it. And more than 100 years later, we're still standing here doing exactly the same thing. Just looking. And then we come to the radical steps. These stone steps were built around 1820 by Dr. Francis Pearson. He built the staircase to divert a public footpath away from his private garden. Town residents were unhappy about the forced detour, and with Pearson himself being known as having radical political views, the steps soon were named the Radical Steps. So I decided to walk all the way down them, and with the rest of the churchyard to explore, I then walked all the way back up them. I definitely got my steps in. Just beyond the churchyard, we come across these pig ornaments, which seemed rather fitting for where we were to walk out into. This is Swine Market. It's considered one of the oldest parts of Kirkby Lonsdale because it preserves the layout and heritage of the town's medieval livestock trading era. Long before modern developments, this cobbled square was the designated area where farmers and drovers traded and slaughtered pigs and other farm animals. The square also houses the town's original medieval market cross, which was relocated here in 1822 from its original position near Main Street and Millbrow. Back at the churchyard, we spotted this grave belonging to John Smith, but John Smith wasn't actually his name. In 1868, a 19-year-old Italian man drowned in the River Lune, and because his identity was unknown, he was buried here under the name John Smith. He was a labourer working at Lunefield in Kirkby Lonsdale. His fellow workers erected the gravestone as a token of their respect. Then it was back down the Radical Steps for a walk along the River Lune back towards the Devil's Bridge. Devil's Bridge is one of Kirkby Lonsdale's most famous landmarks, and most historians date the current gritstone ashlar structure to around 1370. It's thought to have been built either by the monks of St Mary's Abbey in York or by local masons. For centuries it served as a crossing of the River Lune for miles, carrying the busy road between Kendal and Skipton. But the bridge eventually retired from vehicle duty in December 1932, when the nearby Stanley Bridge opened to handle modern traffic. And, of course, there's folklore behind the name. According to local legend, an old woman needed to get across the river after her cow had wandered to the other side. The devil appeared and offered to build her a bridge. But there was a catch. In return, he wanted the soul of the first living thing to cross it. The old woman outwitted Satan by throwing a piece of bread across the bridge, causing her dog to dash over first and cheat the devil of a human soul. And this isn't the only Devil's Bridge in Britain or Europe with a similar legend. Stories like this often became attached to impressive old bridges because ordinary villagers found it hard to imagine how such structures could have been built without some supernatural help. And I know we're thinking the same thing. We're all thinking, I hope the dog was okay. A walk along Stanley Bridge will give you another view of Devil's Bridge you may not have even considered. We then walked back around to Devil's Bridge to treat ourselves to some ice cream after a lovely walk out in Kirkby Lonsdale. If you have enjoyed today's walk, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And stick around for the next video, as here are some videos you might want to watch next. See you on the next wander.